Report to the cloud. All right, so this is where it stands right now. Okay, good. So Ward, you said where do you think, so I have a definition, I think, of what amateur radio is down at like section 1.5, but you think I need to move this up higher?
Yeah, the definition of amateur radio and what it is and why amateur radio operators are special or well suited for this program.
They have licenses.
They do.
So, yes, so we know everything. Yes.
What paragraph did you think that would go well in?
Top of page 6.
Top of page 6.
Yeah, and you could probably collect a couple other things, but top of page 6, first paragraph. I'm gonna move my viewing thing out here, where it starts. The amateur radio community is specifically chosen for this project.
The amateur radio community.
Through the end of the paragraph, and I would
Right
move
there.
that into background.
So we need let's see, I have to get my bearings here again. No, there's add comment. All right, so need better definition of what amateur radio is. Okay, I can put that in. And let me also see, let me double check what when. So Gwen thinks by the time we get to section 1.5.2, he doesn't think there's a need for the first paragraph of this station or of this. So Gwen, you thought I could get rid of this?
Just the first paragraph. Yes, section 1.5.1 is really quite substantial, and there's earlier material as well. And there's no need to reiterate the bands being used, long distance over the horizon. That seemed repetitive.
Yeah, this one though is different from the first one, and this one actually points to figure 2A. I don't think I do that before that, do I?
No, whether you could move that.
So yeah, I'm hesitant to get rid of this because this is the one that's this paragraph is supposed to talk about the amateur radio community, or this section, and this section's supposed to talk more about amateur radio science, the remote sensing techniques. Maybe I'm able to combine these two sections together?
No, I think having the remote sensing techniques is a strong point for 1.5.2.
Yeah.
It just seemed when I was reading it through from scratch that material in the first paragraph was
maybe just the first sentence.
The essence of it was there before.
Okay, so like maybe this first sentence here is what's repetitive, but
Yeah.
what if we start okay. Amateur radio operators I turn off this. Comment that out. What we say figure 2A illustrates how amateur radio communications can remote sense the ionosphere, period.
Yeah.
The figure shows so now it jumps a little bit more just straight into the point of the paragraph. So it says figure 2A illustrates how amateur radio communications can remote sense the ionosphere. The figure shows a 7 megahertz ray trace from a transmitter, and then it just goes on to describe the figure.
I think you can simplify that by putting the figure law shows a 7 megahertz ray trace, Illinois, comma, which illustrates how amateur communications can remote sense the ionosphere.
Figure,
Just move the illustrates section to the end of the sentence after Illinois. You don't need to be redundant mentioning the figure twice.
figure 2A shows a 7 megahertz ray trace from a transmitter in Louisiana towards a receiver in Illinois, which illustrates how amateur radio communications can remote sense the ionosphere. The red path shows the probable path of radio propagation between the two stations given the particular model ionosphere used. Ionospheric refraction is a function of radio frequency, electron density profile, and background magnetic field, and thus radio stations may or may not be able to communicate with each other based on the frequency and used in the state of the ionosphere. Additionally, signals that are successfully received will have been modulated by the ionosphere and therefore carry information that can be used to remote sense the propagation path.
Yeah, I like the edits you've made because the earlier portion describes the citizens that are part of the citizen science. And here
Yeah.
you're describing technically what those citizens are capable of.
Okay, great. Now, if we go back to Ward's point, I feel like we can address what Ward is actually getting at here, rather than just leave a comment. So we will use the citizen science approach for all aspects of this research project. Professional researchers will work with volunteers from the amateur radio community to plan experiments, collect observations, analyze, and publish results. Already, volunteers have worked with the PI and COI of this project to prepare this proposal. The amateur radio community is specifically chosen for this project, as is a large global community with a self-identified interest in radio science. So right around here is where I need to put that in. Okay, so the amateur radio community is specifically chosen for this project, as it is a large global community, over 770,000 licensed operators in the United States and over 3 million worldwide with a self-identified interest in radio science, radio propagation, and space weather. Amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit frequencies that can be used to remote sense the ionosphere. The amateur radio volunteers. All right, so maybe we can put something here. Amateur radio is a hobby for people with a self-identified interest in radio science, radio propagation, and space weather. There it is a large community with a large let's see. So Ward, you don't think I'm defining what amateur radio is well enough here?
I thought it was more or less fine what you were defining. I just thought it needed to be up farther in the document so that when you were suddenly referring to this amateur radio community later on in the proposal, extensively throughout the proposal, you know, the reader would know who these people were and why you thought they were.
So you want this text moved from here up to earlier.
Yeah, up in the background information. I wouldn't put it in the initial research problem, but it's like you're stating the problem and then you're going, okay,
Yeah, right there.
here's the tools that we're
Okay,
going to use.
Okay.
I mean, if you could have a subheading under that, point one, it's just an amateur radio, and then a paragraph within that. That's where all the definition of amateur radio could go.
Okay. So Gareth wrote this section 1.2, and I haven't had a chance to really read this yet. I wrote everything else in the document. Well, I wrote everything in the document except for section 1.2 and the section on the paragraph about SAMI 3, which Joe Huber wrote. So, all right. Let me just get my bearings here. So the question is, when is the best time to introduce amateur radio? So we have our research objectives and significance. We're talking about what a solar eclipse is and why it's important to space physics. And then we talk about well, okay, so here's the first time we talk about amateur radio operators. So it's it's in the second paragraph here. And we talk about what ham site is. And we say there's 2 SEQPs that we're going to do. And we talk about the science objectives. And then we talk about you know, what SAMI 3 is in the model and the importance to the research to operations to research loop. And then we talk about citizen scientists. Okay, and then we get to background and motivation.
Maybe that's the place to define the citizen science before you get into 1.2.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if it should be explained more up here.
Yeah, because I mean, you're using some ham jargon QSO. You're talking about what they talk about, and I really agree with Ward that that, excuse me, it feels like that would just kind of fit in there. It's like, these are what the amateur radio operators do. And then you're talking about their jargon, you're talking about their contact, you're talking about experiments generated by them. And you've defined who they are before you start talking about what they do.
Yes.
It just kind of feels like that's a
Right.
somewhere up in there. If you can make it so that it blends in, that would be a good place to kind of explain it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Rachel, how are you? What's up?
Oh, just stuff I got the one message from that work. I'm going to do some grading.
Perfect. Sounds great. Good luck. Okay. Yeah, so I agree with you. I think some of the text here can be used. So let me copy this for a second and let's move up to this part of the document where it says this project. I feel like right here. This project will study the atmospheric response of the 2024 total solar eclipse to a series of large-scale citizen science experiments known as solar eclipse QSO parties. The citizen scientists will come from the amateur radio community. Amateur radio is a hobby for people with a self-identified interest in radio science, radio propagation, space weather. Is a large global community with over 770,000 licensed operators in the US and over 3 million worldwide. Amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit on frequencies that can be used to remote sense the atmosphere.
Would it be useful to say something at that point about, go back to the first of that paragraph and say they are familiar with ionospheric phenomenon or behavior, something like that.
Let's
But at
see.
the end of that paragraph, amateurs are already familiar with the effects of the ionosphere.
Are well and therefore already study the ionosphere.
That's good.
Amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit frequencies that can be used to remote sense the ionosphere, and therefore already study the ionosphere and space weather.
As part of their licensing requirements.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yes.
Let's see. Let's see. Are affected. Transmit frequencies are affected by the ionosphere and space weather, and therefore are required to study those fields as part of their licensing requirements.
Okay.
Okay, so now it says amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit on frequencies that are affected by the ionosphere and space weather, and therefore are required to study those fields as part of their licensing requirements. And therefore have the word
Therefore
required,
have studied or
and therefore must study those fields as part of their licensing requirements.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll read again. Amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit on frequencies that are affected by the atmosphere and space weather, and therefore must study those fields as a part of their licensing requirements.
Better. Mhm.
Okay, great. So now I define what QSO is here because we have solar eclipse QSO party.
Instead of ham jargon, let's say amateur radio jargon. the whole ham thing is kind of confusing to outsiders.
Yes. I think part of the problem with naming the organization HamSci is that we're kind of stuck with the name ham. We have to use
Yeah.
it at some point, but
Hey, Nathaniel, do we
Well,
want,
names are, names are funny, as long as you got it all defined within the website and stuff, it's fine. You can call it the pink receivers, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't really matter.
I'm wondering if we want to use the word jargon or if we want to change that to QSO as a amateur radio term. Or
that might be,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just throwing something out.
yeah, that works for me. Is an amateur. Okay. The citizen science. Okay, so the citizen, I'm gonna read the whole paragraph. This project will study the ionospheric response to the 2024 total solar eclipse through a series of large-scale citizen science experiments known as solar eclipse QSO parties. The citizen scientists will come from the amateur radio community. Amateur radio is a hobby for people with a self-identified interest in radio science, radio propagation, and space weather. It is a large global community with over 770,000 licensed operators in the US and over 3 million worldwide. Amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit on frequencies that are affected by the ionosphere and space weather, and therefore must study those fields as part of their licensing requirements. QSO is an amateur radio term for a contact between two operators.
Yeah, I think I would make that another paragraph because you're jumping.
Yeah, I think you're right. Should I remind people that the that it's QSO is in as solar eclipse QSO party, or do you think that people will make that jump? QSO.
If in the first mention of it, you define, you've already defined QSO, and you might just say a competition format exercise to make contacts.
Yeah, I
Just let
define
it go at
that.
that.
I define that later. Down where did I define that? I define what a QSO party is down in the solar eclipse QSO party section. Down here. See right over here?
Mhm.
Each contact that an amateur radio makes is known as a QSO, and a QSO party is amateur radio parlance for a type of contest often focused around a particular theme.
Okay.
So I do define that down there. And up here, back at the top, I just say, this is back to a name. There are large-scale citizen science experiments known as solar eclipse QSO parties. Maybe I don't even need to, maybe I can just delete this QSO as an amateur radio term from the first part since it's being defined down in this later section.
Well, we've already used the term before this point in the text.
Mhm.
So I think it's important probably to define it pretty quickly.
Yeah,
I'd say if anything, it should stay earlier and maybe consider taking it out later.
later.
Although repetition is not bad.
I agree with that. Having some repetition in the document is not a terrible thing. Let's see. Amateur radio is a hobby, so what if I move this sentence immediately after solar eclipse QS after I introduce solar eclipse QSO parties?
It's not bad. That's a good idea, yeah.
So then,
Or it'd be better to put your definition of a QSO party up there. Just you got the whole thing covered out of the way.
Yeah, I want to make the beginning part a little quicker and to the point about the science, and kind of, I don't want to get too much in the weeds up here.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at this section of like a job application. The HR folks read the first couple paragraphs and decide whether they like it or don't before they read the whole darn thing. So
That's right. And and that's actually very true. That this first section here actually was submitted as the project summary. So we've already submitted the first section to NASA, and that is what you saw before I started making these changes is actually the project summary. Okay, so now I have it like this. This project will study the atmospheric response to the 2024 total solar eclipse through a series of large-scale citizen science experiments known as solar eclipse QSO parties, SEQPs. The citizen scientists will come from the amateur radio community. QSO is an amateur radio term for a contact between two operators. Amateur radio is a hobby for people with a self-identified interest in radio science, radio propagation, and space weather. It is a large global community with over 770,000 licensed operators in the US and over 3 million worldwide. Amateur radio operators are unique among citizen scientists in that they are licensed to transmit on frequencies that are affected by the atmosphere and space weather, and therefore must study those fields as part of their licensing requirements.
my 2 cents, the definition of QSO still sticks out like a sore thumb. But again, it depends on the purpose of this first section. How?
What if I just delete it from here?
Yeah.
Because it is explained later.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. One little addition, Nathaniel,
Yeah.
that they are licensed to transmit on frequencies. They are licensed by governments to transmit on frequencies.
Hmm.
Okay, because license, I could be a state license. I mean, I could be, who knows what it is, but it's licensed by governments.
Yeah. They are licensed.
By the FCC.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
Well,
Even
Well,
better.
except that some are not licensed by the FCC.
Yeah, you gotta have some people.
right. I like by
beyond the-
governments because you're right. It's not just the FCC.
Right.
I'm like, I've
You-
also been like, well, do I say by federal governments or by, but you know, is
National
National governments.
by national governments.
according, yeah, by international treaty, if you want to throw that in there too, but
I think this is good enough.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
getting a little
You're using
thick.
the two.
Yeah, we can.
Right, so.
So one of the things we have to remember here with this as a NASA proposal, the thing that NASA really cares about, the first thing they really care about is the science. I think. NSF tends to be a little bit more into their broader impacts, but NASA really cares about the science, number one. And then
Mhm.
and then number two, where the chances are if this gets funded is it's going to get funded from the citizen science section of NASA, and they'll care a little bit more about some of these details. But I think NASA's goal in general is, you know, what I'm trying to get at is we want to make sure that we kind of put the science up front and don't get bogged down with these little details, and make sure that when you read this, when the reviewers read this first thing, they really need to be like, oh, these are the science questions that are being answered, and we're actually convinced that they're interesting questions and they can get answered.
Mhm.
So now that okay, I do like how that paragraph reads better though, and I do think it is important to, you know, state what the amateur radio community is up front and why, you know, why they're particularly credentialed to do this. So I think that's really good. Now, if we go back to this part here, is some of this repetitive beyond what it needs to be?
Yeah, take it away.
Yes. What's in green?
What's in
Yeah, 'cause
green? has-
you've already defined the amateur radio community, so.
Yeah. Also, I think I have this sentence at least twice in the paper, and I don't know that we need it both times. vol- volunteers have worked I thought it was in there twice.
Yeah, it is. That was something I noticed. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
It's in 1.3 and 1.5.1.
Okay, so it's in 1.3. So 1.3.
Second paragraph. Right in the middle of the stack. You got it.
Yep.
Maybe I'll delete it from here. Do you think it fits better in 1.3 or in the 1.5.1?
Not
Well,
sure
one
really
point-
fits in the perceived impact of the work.
So the reason I had put it there is because NASA has this thing called the NASA Heliophysics Big Year, and one of the things they're pushing is citizen science. And one of the things that this, if you go look into the whole field of citizen science, there's a whole like list of best practices. And one of the things that they say is the best practice in citizen science is where you get your citizen volunteers to actually participate in all levels of all stages of the science. So not just data collection, but also creation of experiments, actually doing some of the science, doing the publication.
Oh, okay.
So the point that I'm trying to drive home here is that it's not just me, the PI, writing this thing. I've actually gone to the volunteers and we have actually discussed this together. And this actually really is a citizen science proposal. That's why the sentence is in there. So
Go ahead. Doesn't hurt to have it.
yeah, I don't know that we need to have it twice. So that maybe it's better in the perceived. It's, I'm talking because right here I'm calling out heliophysics big year. I'm calling out the sentence I had right before. We anticipate that hundreds of thousands of people will either directly participate in this project or read its results. Volunteers will participate in all stages of this project, including planning, data collection, leadership, analysis, and publication. Already, volunteers from the ham site community have assisted in preparing this proposal. So I'm trying to give some evidence to support that volunteers are actually going to do this and not just. So I think it actually maybe fits well here, and maybe we can get rid of it from the later part, which is this one. I mean, I basically repeat the same sentence over here too. Let's see how we're doing on our page count too. I think I want to move the conversation away from some of this wordsmithing for a little bit too. And I want to, especially I see Pat Reif has joined us and Mary Lou is here and Gwen and a few other people who have a little bit more of a science background. I'm a little over. What I want to do is I want to ask the question, is there a way that I can or should strengthen the science case of the proposal? Are there any comments regarding the science?
Aren't you going to show or the map you made from 2017? And I think you can clearly say that was a unique observation, which had never been shown before. And what we're trying to do is to build on this and make it more comprehensive and better coverage.
That sounds good. So let me I'm gonna put a note there. I'm not gonna wordsmith that in right now, but I think I will try and. So in 2017, we showed that the eclipses affect the ionosphere and radio propagation on a scale that had never been observed before. We are working to build on those results. And what did you say after that, Pat?
Well, with the higher density of observers and a more complete coverage. And that was a total. We'll also get an annular that has never been done this way before, as far as I know.
Yeah, I agree. No annular eclipses have been done this way before.
So, you know, I want to say, you want to say that you've got a technique that you can demonstrate works and works with amateurs,
Yeah,
and it makes good science.
yeah,
And here are two more opportunities, and the last opportunities for a good long while before it comes back to the United States again.
yeah. This might be something to work, back into, I guess even into like the perceived, maybe really put that into the perceived impact of the work section.
Yeah, you don't want to have all your science in figure caption.
No. I just put that as a comment there because that's the caption where I have that first figure.
But really, people often read the summary and the figures and the conclusions. So yeah, make sure the figure captions are very positive and very,
I agree. I pretty much have almost all of the 2017 GRL results in here because I have that figure. I have this one, which
That's a good one, yeah.
this one shows the results on all 4 different bands. And then I also have the figure that shows the data model comparison.
Now, let me ask another question. Now, these are active QSOs. What about more of the beacon type QSOs? Because
we do that also.
Because some observers are going to say, "Hey, I'm for the 4 minutes of totality. I'm not going to be on the radio."
Well, we address that because we have a whole section in here called Whisper Party. So the Whisper Party, where I have this level of, let's see, Whisper Party for stations who wish to participate using the Whisper mode instead of participating in the SEQP contest. This level of participation is highly appropriate for people who wish to be able to set up a radio operation that contributes valuable data without having to actively interact with the equipment for the duration of the 10-hour SEQP. Furthermore, the Whisper equipment is widely used by and available to the amateur radio community. It's accessible to operators even to operators who do not have a very high level of technical skill. Therefore, the Whisper Party will open the SEQP up to a much larger pool of participants and increase the amount of data generated. Does that help to address it, Pat?
Yes, I think that's good. Yeah, because a lot of people are not going to want to be doing active QSOs.
And then the other thing that Steve Serwin, who's on here, is running, he's doing this HFTDOA beacon experiment where he's actually going to use a predetermined waveform that they're going to transmit along certain geometries along the eclipse path or across the eclipse path. And they're going to be able to do time difference of arrival of multipath propagation to measure the height of the ionosphere. So this is an experiment for more like advanced users.
We also have some data from the 2017 eclipse where we took Steve Ryer's data, WA9 VNJ,
Yeah,
and used that to calculate the relative change of the layer height, and then compared that to a ionosonde, and they agreed pretty well.
I agree with that.
So of course, that requires a lot more gear than a lot of hams may have.
Yeah. Which,
Um,
I mean,
But
so I
you're missing the
cited,
WWV, and that doesn't require you to be there in front of the radio while you're out watching the eclipse.
yes. So I noted too, though, that, so I noted that in a few ways, Steve. So one thing I did was I cited those results that you just talked about. I also talked about in this triangle, which I think, Gary, I really like this. Gary came up with this first. I really like this. So here at the bottom, I talk a little bit about the Grape 2 Doppler event, which makes use of the WWV. And I do point out that that is, funded by a different proposal, but is part of this whole Ham Sci Festivals of Eclipse Science. So for this proposal, we're focusing on the top 3 here. And then for the other proposal, these are funded by the other things. Mary Lou, did you have any comments on the science?
No, I like what you have very much here, and I really like the blue triangle. I think that's great. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I have some minor corrections and things for some of the other parts. I'll send you later.
Great, thank you.
And I think I'm pretty sure you put this in already, but the ham radio community is really the only amateur community dedicated to heliophysics research. Who cares about space weather?
I agree, but I have to be a little careful with what I say about that, or because we have friends at Aurora Source, right? And I'm sure
that's true. That's true.
we don't want to.
Yeah.
We want to stay friends with the Aurora Source people.
Yeah, no,
And-
you're right. You're right.
So
We have more members than they do.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Since the whisper transmitters are really very small objects, has anybody done anything with attaching them to weather balloons and letting them float up through the atmosphere and see if you could see anything different there?
I can't remember if Whisper's been gone on sent up on balloons. I know that
Oh yeah, the ones that go around the world now.
oh yeah.
All have whisper on them.
Oh yeah, that's right, they do.
There's a whole mess of them that go up. And what's really cool, they're pico balloons. They're basically party balloons that are filled with hydrogen, and their entire payload is less than an ounce. It has a solar cell and a capacitor instead of a battery.
Wow.
So, they only transmit in the daylight. But yeah, there's a big group, the AMSAT group that flies those pico balloons, and some of them have gone around the earth 4 times.
Wow. So I'm currently 5 lines over the page limit. So I think when I go through this later, I know Bob Gerzoff has sent me a number of comments that I haven't integrated yet. I imagine Mary Lou is good at cutting things. And so I'll still have to go through this and try to tighten it up a little bit. One of my favorite things to do with these is find paragraphs that have only 1 or 2 words on the line and try to figure out how I can delete words from the paragraph to make it so that all the lines are filled up.
Nathaniel, I've got a question on the science objectives towards the bottom of page 2.
Okay.
Now, I don't have a great knowledge about the model being used from the NRL, but is it known whether it has deficiencies in particular areas of physics that this experiment might highlight. If so, I think it would be useful to add it there to strengthen what otherwise might be rather generic, the phrase used to tune the model to best match the observations.
Let me, I'll send Joe Huba an email asking him, because he is the one that wrote that model.
Yeah.
And that is a good question. So I could just say,
I naively, I have in mind things like sporadic E.
Yeah.
What might be the impact, because you're in such a limited time window, if there was extensive sporadic E during the time of the eclipse?
are there any known am I right? Let me see. How does that look?
Yep, that's fine.
Great. So yeah, I'll just shoot that off to Joe. Yeah, so if he gives me any input, I agree. I think that would strengthen the proposal a lot if we can give some more concrete examples of
Yeah.
how we might actually close that loop. I think it's coming along.
Yeah, this is quite a piece of work. You should be proud so far of what you got done.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's help.
I'd fund it, sure.
Well, I have good hopes for it, because I know that the NASA Citizen Science group, they really like what we're doing. And I think, part of that heliophysics big year, I think they're looking for some big things that have to do with citizen science. And I think they recognize that this is one of the ways that it can be done. And we do have a good track record of doing it. So, I think we just have to make sure it's compliant and do our best. I really like the idea of asking Joe Huba for some concrete ideas about, feeding back to the model. I think that's a really good idea.
Could you repost this with the changes that were made today so that I don't screw up and edit the last version?
Sure.
Or read the last version.
Yes, I will send that out.
Thanks.
So. Jim, were you on the email chain where I sent out the original?
I don't believe I was, no.
All right, so what I can do is, let's see, I'll just send you. Do you want a Word version of this too, by any chance? What's that?
That would be great, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, so the way I normally do this, let's see, let me delete a bunch of these things so that I don't get confused. I want that closed. It's over here, that's fine. So as you can see, I'm writing this document in this funny system here. It's called Overleaf. It's using a typesetting language called LaTeX. And then it generates these PDFs over here. And then what I can do with that is I'm able to open them in Adobe Acrobat over here. I can use Adobe Acrobat to convert them to Microsoft Word. But the problem is the conversion's imperfect, so a lot of times you get like spacing errors or punctuation errors in the Word document. But what the Word document does is it makes it really easy to you know, use the track changes feature and suggest edits and things
Right.
like that. So I guess what I'm getting at is if I send you the Word document and you see like punctuation errors and you're not sure about it, you can refer back to the original PDF. That's the version of record.
Okay.
And so, does everyone on here know Pat Reif?
No,
I don't think so.
I've
I'd
heard
like
the
to
name.
introduce Pat. So Dr. Patricia Reif is a professor at Rice University, and she is her call sign is W5TAR, and she is both an AGU fellow and a very long time not only amateur radio operator, but educator, amateur radio operator educator. And she has made university courses around the physics of amateur radio, and she's had a long career in developing materials software for both for space science as well. And so Pat is actually going to be our keynote speaker at the Hamsci workshop this
Oh.
year. So I'd like to welcome her, and maybe Pat, would you like to say a couple of words of hello?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I've been a ham. Well, back when I was a graduate student, they required both listening and transmitting part of the code, and so I didn't get my license when I was a graduate student. But when my son was in the Boy Scouts, I went ahead and got it then. And I've been teaching amateur radio now in Houston to children, and now mostly teachers for the last 30 years. And I've, gotten at least another 100 ham through the process and get their license. I got 10 this semester. They all got their license just a couple weeks ago. And but so the first half of the class is to teach them the basics of ham radio and get them to pass the exam. And then the second half is space weather and the sun and the magnetosphere and all those other things that means I'm a magnetospheric scientist by trade. So that's one reason why I love to do it. But I work really closely with the amateur radio group in Houston. There's like 10 amateur radio clubs in the Houston area, including Clear Lake, where NASA is, and Northwest and downtown and all over. So it's a very active place that does a lot of balloon work. They send up a lot of these pico balloons. And then we just had a downlink with ISS to one of our local schools a couple weeks ago. So life is fun. I don't get a chance because I'm a real scientist in my real life. I don't get a chance to play much with the hobby except the semesters that I'm teaching it. And I teach it every fourth semester. So this is my semester on. But anyway, I'm always happy to, to participate. I'm really excited about this project. You can, I am going to be leading a group in Bandera, Texas. So it's going to be on a dude ranch. It's not going to be cheap, but if somebody does want to set up a location there, we can do that. But you'd have to, get the accommodations through the dude ranch, as I said, which isn't cheap, but it'd be fun. And we'll have our planetarium there, and so life is exciting. And go Astros.
That's
Is that the
fantastic.
Mayan Dude Ranch?
No, it's not the Mayan Dude Ranch. I looked at them, and because we have a lot of vegetarians, I said, "Do you have any vegetarian menu?" And they said, "Hell no, this is Texas." So I said, "All right, not Mayan, but it's not far from there. It's called the Flying L."
Oh, I used to live on the Flying L. for a
Oh,
while.
cool,
And I'm only, I don't know, about 20 miles from there now. I go to Bandera all the time.
cool. Well, I mean, if somebody wants to come and set up a station there, we can probably work that out.
Well, I can certainly help you with that. I got the gear and know right where it is.
Cool. Yeah, we bought the place out for our for the Rice alumni and friends and whatnot. So, but we're just opening up for lodging reservations next week, I hope. But at least we've got the whole place secured, so that's important. And it doesn't have a lot of lights that turn on automatically when it gets dark, which for some of us who are eclipse chasers, that can be some of the worst. The worst things is to be watching the sky and then suddenly the lights come on. But I've been to 18. I've been 18 times on the center line, 2 annulars and 16 totals, and I've only been clouded out 3 times. So not a bad percentage. So I will be, my plan is to even the Flying L is actually in the intersection between the annular and the total, which is kind of cool. But for the annular, I may actually go to the beach at Corpus because, annulars on the water sounds like fun. Anyway, I'm happy to help any way I can. There's sort of 2 ways I can help. One is to be completely invisible and act as a reviewer with no conflicts of interest.
Well, I think that ship has sailed.
or so it's up to you. I'm happy to help any way I can with my limited time.
Thank you. Can you just say a couple of words about your scientific career too? Because you have quite a fascinating science career. I'm sure people would love to hear about that.
Well, I started at Wellesley actually, and I signed up for astronomy because they had this really nice 24-inch telescope. Well, what they don't tell you is the first semester of basic astronomy is basic physics, because they knew that you can't do astronomy unless you know physics, which makes sense. So I started taking physics and I really got excited about physics. And then the continuation of astronomy actually conflicted with the continuation of physics, and I stayed with physics. But I didn't stay with Wellesley. It was too cold and too preppy for me at the time. So I went back to Oklahoma and graduated from Oklahoma State and got married. My husband was going to be doing a basic training so he could stay out of Vietnam. And I was looking for I applied to Rice both in the physics department and the space science department. At the time they're separate, now they're together, but and I got accepted by both of them. And I said, well, who has a summer job? Because I don't have anything to do this summer. I might as well get started on some research. And they said, well, we just put an experiment on the moon on Apollo 14, and they need someone who knows Fortran that can help and would be willing to learn assembly language that can help do the data analysis. And I said, me. So that was 1971, and I have been counting electrons and protons in space for now 52 years. and 46 years back at Rice on the miscellaneous and now permanent faculty. So I've been involved with Apollo, Atmosphere Explorer, Dynamics Explorer, Polar, Image, Cluster, and MMS. There's one more, I'm missing one. But I've been involved in a lot of heliospheric missions along the way, and had a lot of fun, and still going great guns. And one of these days I'll retire, but probably definitely not till after the eclipse.
That is great. Thank you so much, Pat. Well, it is now 5:07 p.m. here, and I have to pick up little Anthony. And we have a radio kit building night for our radio club at 7:30 p.m. So we got to pick up Anthony, have to go with Rachel to go get some chicken Caesar salads and then come back to university. So I emailed everyone. I think I got everyone on the list here on the call. I sent them a copy of the current draft of the proposal along with the Microsoft Word document. So yes, David, KE5DPZ, you are on the list too. So it will hopefully show up. If it does not show up, send me an email, but I think I got everybody. So.
Here's my latest undergraduate. Come here, Chloe, say hi.
What is this?
That is a Hamside groups. Give them your new call sign.
Hi everyone, I'm Chloe. My call sign is KI5YOW.
Yow.
Hi, Chloe.
Hi.
2 weeks old. 2 weeks
2
old.
weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Bye, everyone.
73s.
Thank you, 7-3.
73.